don't just look at call centers as something to mine for data. All the interactions you have with your partner ecosystem and customers are data that you can mine to improve this opportunity.
I 100% agree with that, Matt, and especially if you've got a reasonably mature customer success process already. Your CSMs probably have really good kickoff documentation, QBR documentation, and those are gold for mining for areas to improve.
Hi, I'm Matt Egol, host of the CX and Culture Connection, the podcast for leaders looking to drive value by focusing on customer experience and culture together. I'm really excited to be here today with Peter, who's a fractional executive focused on building winning partner ecosystems. Whether you're a CX leader looking to work with the right team of tech, analytics, and marketing services providers, or on the vendor side of things looking to drive better client outcomes, partner ecosystems are a key enabler of great CX. So I'm really excited to be here with Peter. I've really enjoyed collaborating with him on how the customer experience side of partner ecosystems comes together with the work he does on designing and nurturing that partner ecosystem. I think they're really important to do together, and really looking forward to getting your thoughts today, Peter, about how to make a partner ecosystem thrive and how things like AI are changing the game today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation as well, Matt, and our collaboration is a lot of fun, and hopefully we can share some of our seasoning and gray hair with those watching the podcast, and they can get something out of it.
So just to get us going, we're going to have a lot of fun today. Just to get us going, what goes into creating a great partner ecosystem?
I think it's a lot more complicated than most people would normally attribute it. It can't just be about signing a partner agreement and expecting a partner to suddenly want to work with your product or service. It requires strategy that includes your culture. The best partner ecosystems are really integrated into if you're an ISV, into your product and service culture. It has to be, again, in my opinion, the best performing ecosystems are those that are tightly integrated into your overall go-to-market strategy versus a lot of folks, when they think about a partner ecosystem, they'll throw out the concept of a channel. And I think channels are kind of an older paradigm for commodities, where you had a very commoditized product or service, and you wanted another sales channel of other providers who maybe were turnkey and could sell your product exclusively. And I think in the 21st century, the complexity of brands acquiring products and services, that traditional at arm's length channel just doesn't serve the customer as well, and it certainly doesn't serve the vendor who's trying to build an ecosystem. A more integrated, collaborative, shared value attainment kind of partnership is really what's going to drive success, in my experience.
In my own to make it personal for a second, there's a lot of different ways partner ecosystems come into play. And I'd love to get your take for the audience about what are some of the different ways that partner ecosystems add value and what types of industries they're relevant in, so they can see how it applies to them. But to start with something more personal to me, I grew up in the consulting industry before I went out and launched JourneySpark Consulting, which we still do consulting work, but my focus now is much more in a boutique firm on leadership coaching, and helping enable and drive culture change for people to be change agents within their company rather than these big, massive transformation programs. And also enjoy working with smaller stage companies now versus just the big guys, more offense and less defense. Being in the consulting world and working on, digital transformation and big customer experience programs, we were the partner ecosystem. So we would work with platforms like Salesforce or SAP or Adobe, and, we had very large businesses as the implementation partners, or later platforms like Qualtrics or Medallia or other customer listening tools, and to apply their tools with clients. And those companies, the software as a service companies, realize they couldn't deliver value without partners.
Right.
How do you think about, like, when is a partner ecosystem most valuable, and how it applies in more places than it used to because of the whole cloud and distributed nature of many ecosystems now?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you, I kind of grew up in my career with that same kind of project, and it's been about 12 years in the agency side. And at that time, the technology was bigger. You ended up having large software systems with multiple, years in some cases to implement. But today, it is a lot different than that. There's a lot narrower products that are SaaS products in many cases that can be integrated in, and a brand can pick the best solution for a very specific business problem. And I think that means that the service providers, the consultants, are even more important, because it's not a big multi-year digital transformation. It's a smaller project, a sprint to accomplish a specific outcome. And I think that makes the consultant's job even more important, because the ecosystem on the product side is much more bespoke. The brand's going to pick, instead of one or two or three big products, they might have 20 or 30 or 40 different products that need to be worked together, or they might have a problem that they need help figuring out. They've identified a product. How do they pull that in and make it work with the tech debt that they already have? And so the ecosystem becomes critical for those ISVs to know how to work together, that they should be integrated. They should know how to service customers, joint customers. And on the service provider side, it means that, those days that you and I grew up in, where you could have competency in one or two big technologies or one or two big solutions, that doesn't work very well anymore. You have to have a multidisciplined service provider capability, because that's what your customers need, and to be able to help them.
I had recently on the podcast Marty Kine, who's the head of strategy at Salesforce, and he used to be an analyst at Gartner focused on customer data platforms. And then he's been leading the kind of cloud strategy efforts at Salesforce. He and I go back to when he worked at Booz when I was a partner there. So, it's really great to see the career he's had. I love seeing people who leave and what they do over their careers, and you feel like you had an impact on them earlier in their career, which is rewarding. But he was a great guest. He has a book out now, Customer 360. And one of the things Marty and and if you like the episode, definitely like and subscribe it if you want to check out other people like Marty and other prior guests and people like Peter, so that you don't miss any content. But the reason I brought up Marty, Peter, is Salesforce has gone from being the minnow to being the big fish, right? And their success is because of the partner ecosystem. That was actually, when I was at partner at PwC, the fastest growing alliance practice was the Salesforce practice. But one thing that's interesting that Marty talked about in his book and on the podcast is Salesforce knows they're not the only platform. Delivering Customer 360, requires you to integrate many different things.
And even within their portfolio of products, that's an ecosystem. There isn't a Salesforce product. I mean, most people think about Salesforce.com, the CRM, but that's only one of dozens and dozens of products in the Salesforce ecosystem. And if you look at their service provider partners, that is also its own ecosystem, and they have specialties. Some of them will do marketing cloud, some will do data cloud, some will do CRM. So, the days of picking a platform and being happy to only advise on that, if you're a big service provider, that just doesn't work very well anymore because that isn't the only product in the brand stack. And you're either going to have to diversify your skill set or have your own ecosystem of other service providers, because, if you're Salesforce Marketing Cloud, there's going to be other products in the stack that your team is going to have to learn how to work with and integrate with.
I'd encourage people who want to go deeper, so I don't take up too much of our time now, about some of the concepts of how all the different pieces fit together and the evolution of the marketing and sales and service clouds, and how the data and tech stack fit together, to check out Marty's book. You can also see my book review for Customer 360 by Marty. I do book reviews and then often have the authors. They're one of the types of guests I have on the show. So you can check out my book review for Customer 360 on the What We Think page of JourneySpark's website. So Peter, a lot of the growth and importance in partner ecosystems, I think, have actually evolved because a lot of companies are growing with digital, and a way that they engage with customers often is through content and through digital experiences. And their partners also create earlier engagement with people, often before they'll engage with the tech platform. Or it's a bit like pinball, people bounce around. They might engage your content, the partner content, your customers, analysts. How do you think about the role of digital experience and the role the partners play, the role of the digital experience in making sure the partner experience is a good one?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. I think historically digital, it evolved from very static in the early days of being, your digital shingle you hung out in front of your store. And, for the B2B and B2C consumer brands, that's pretty obviously not the case any longer. That's where they're doing business. So that same transition needs to happen with the way brands work with partners. If you're an ISV, you can't simply have, a partner cage that, is how you're going to engage with your ecosystem. If you want to take it seriously, you have to build the same ways of interacting and communicating and engaging with the ecosystem that you do with your target prospects. You have to have tools for them to learn about your product or service and keep up to date and get certified, and share information about deals or share information about pipeline. And that is, we're talking about ecosystems. That partner tech stack is its own ecosystem. There are partner relationship management tools. There's partner.
But sorry to interrupt, but what you're highlighting, Peter, is when you're designing the digital experience, they're the personas that are engaging with you on the journey. Your partners are one of the personas engaging with you digitally. You've got potential employees, customers, other regulatory stakeholders, partners. There's different personas who could engage with your digital content. What you're highlighting is the partner experience is an experience you need to manage.
100%. And it's even more complex than a single persona. And I think, a lot of, I last 15 years I've been on the ISV side. And, I think speaking from that point of view, most leaders in the C-suite at ISVs who do think about partners think about it fairly narrowly. They think about referrals and deal flow. So they think about engaging with the sales team. So it's the first thing. It's important. It's the first thing an ISV will do is sales training for their partners. However, that's just the tip of the spear. If you are, a B2B SaaS product, it doesn't do any good to only have salespeople out there talking about your product. Yeah, you'll get deal flow, but you'll have some really unhappy customers really fast because there's other personas that you have to have engagement with and train them and keep them up to date.
So let's, I'm going to make this really tangible for the audience, and we can dive in for a minute on some of these. In the work I've done on how customer experience and customer success go together, I think of customer success as a very important variation of customer experience in the B2B world, where the customer success are people in your organization who are there to make sure the experience is good of your customers. And they typically get more involved post-sale, after it's closed, for onboarding through to renewal, to make sure there's a good experience. And often the first 90 days post-sale are critical, because if you don't have a good onboarding experience, and the partner is key to that in your ecosystem to make that go well, if that doesn't go well, it sets the table for the whole rest of the relationship. And then what'll happen is you spend a lot of effort to fix it later and you don't get a renewal, right? And the customer lifetime value is not good. So you can think of it through the lens of customer success, which is post-sale typically, but the best practice is to start thinking about that experience even before it closes, because you actually manage expectations and you get the customer to engage in the right way even before they close, to understand how they're going to get value out of your product. So there's the sales, the post-sales, and what we were talking about a moment ago is the marketing. All of them are different lenses into the way to think about managing your partner experience.
Right. Absolutely. And if you're thinking about the ecosystem from an experiential point of view, that can have a dramatic impact on top and bottom line, because those are the people who are going to ensure you get the renewal and you have a good CSAT, because they're the ones that care about the product going into production more than your sales team does. They're going to be the ones who are there looking for the upsell and the cross-sell in those accounts, because they're going to be feet on the ground. They're going to hear about, your first year project. Often, if it's a SaaS product, it's probably just, one small division or a POC or a prototype, something they're getting started with. So thinking about that post-sale experience, not just for the customer, but for the partners, can really drive the numbers that you're looking for. So you can't overlook.
What you're highlighting is, to come back to this, that there's marketing, sales, and customer success are all critical stakeholders internally. And obviously operations and service delivery and all like those, they're all important for the great outcomes with the customer. If you approach the value of a partner ecosystem as a sales pipeline problem, you're not going to get all the value. You're going to train your salespeople, you're going to train your partners, but what you'll have is a pipeline, but you won't have a good marketing lens on designing the good experience for the customer, and you won't have the great customer success. You may be missing a customer success team if you don't have that.
I agree. And in my experience, the vendors who only focus on the referral and the deal flow phase of a partner journey won't even have a solid pipeline long term, because it's so one-dimensional, and you're not even articulating the value to the partner of the partnership when you're just, where's my leads? So thinking about these things and putting that post-sale journey in place is beneficial for the ecosystem too, because that's what really drives their engagement and drives their interest in bringing the next deal to the table.
One of my clients said something that I really liked once, which is, and a lot of the times what you see is the chief customer officer, the chief experience officer, the chief digital officer, the chief revenue officer. These are roles that have a broader view than just marketing or just sales. Because what you're seeing is great experience requires focus on marketing, product, commerce, and service together. What we're talking about is so either you need to have a role like one of those that has a more holistic view that brings the pieces together, or these people have to team, right? Yet you need collaboration between marketing, sales, and service, and technology, right? And finance and other functions. So, a lot of the time, so this one client said to me, he was the CMO who then became a chief customer. And he said, marketing's eating sales. And what he meant by that is, like most B2B organizations, sales is the big kahuna, and marketing's the step is the kind of the weaker one. But in consumer companies, marketing tends to be the more powerful in the organization. But in a lot of organizations now, with digital and with growth of experience and analytics, you're seeing this, what he meant by marketing's eating sales is that, and he has a strategy to grow through the partner ecosystem. This is a SaaS company, right? He means that they're paying a lot more attention to growing and making the partner ecosystem successful, and that the strength of their digital strategy is actually the partner ecosystem. How do you make sure that the partners are engaging in digital, 30,000 plus partners, right? And then how do you make sure the customers know how to find the right partner? Lead gen.
He speaks my language. I completely agree. And I think, the traditional salesperson who has responsibility for driving their own, pipeline through traditional means, networking and cold calling and that kind of thing, it just doesn't work. It's not scalable. There's too many blockers to spam and voice calls. That if you're an individual contributor, it's very very difficult to do that. So you need marketing, and then if you, by extension, realize that highly skilled salesperson, what you really want him doing is positioning your product, navigating a sales process, and closing a deal. If that's your focus, then you need to invest more in marketing. And then you also need to invest more in ecosystems, because those two things are what informs that individual contributor, where the deals are and how to navigate the deal. And it's back to my point earlier. If you're only focusing on your ecosystem from a referral point of view, you're missing the massive value of a co-sell motion. If you're that highly skilled individual contributor, and now instead of it just being you and your SE pursuing an enterprise, if it's you and this ecosystem of partners who know that brand, who might know the decision makers and the stakeholders and the competitors, your ability to sell that deal more quickly with a higher price goes up dramatically.
I'm going to give you a couple examples that illustrate this point, and I won't use names, but I think people will get the idea. So I was working with one client on their customer listening and customer experience strategy, and it wasn't just me. It was a team of me and other partners, on this. And the client, a part of our scope was to design how did they think about customer listening and modernize to take advantage of new tools that were out there from different vendors. And then change the way people were working, like people, process, and tech in the organization, to build insights to drive continuous improvement in the customer experience. In this case, we actually made it self-funding, Peter, because the savings on research and testing were millions of dollars. As a bigger bank, right? The savings were big enough that they actually paid for the investment in the technology, because they saved money on research and testing because the insights they were generating were so much better. They were more frequent and high quality. They didn't have to do as much research and user testing, right, on launching websites and apps and marketing campaigns.
Because they actual data that they own, instead of having to go out and test something to try to create the data.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many things that are happening now. And like, if you want to learn about revolution in testing, check in my episode with Nitin Sayer, who's the CEO of Wevo, and we talked about the age of simulation. Now you can actually simulate experiences through the eyes of your personas using AI in 5 minutes. What used to take days or weeks or months can be done rapidly with lots of iterations, cheap. That will unlock huge savings in research and testing. So in this particular example, we were a partner in the ecosystem with many of these vendors, but we needed to help the client figure out who the right vendors were. So in this particular case, it wasn't a sole source. There was an RFP, right? And we had one particular vendor participate in the RFP that was chosen for one piece of the stack. And they actually recommended a scope. And we said to them, no, you need to think bigger. What the client needs is this. And they ended up getting something that was 5 times the deal value they proposed, because we had a more bigger vision of how to create value for the client. And so they just wanted to get in the door and land and expand. But they actually ended up getting a 7-figure deal instead of a 6-figure deal. But they were pitching something much smaller. Now, in this case, the partner ecosystem drove value for them.
5x value just by listening to somebody who knew the account better than this person could ever do it.
Another example with a hotel client, we were working on a similar strategy, a customer experience strategy, where different vendors were competing for that, and they ended up getting their largest deal ever out of that. Right. So like it can create value. The key is for that to be valuable for the client, it has to, we have to be focusing on the client needs and what they need. In some cases, it won't be this massive deal, but in some cases, your partner can actually help you get a bigger deal.
And in some cases, the partner will tell you to walk away from it because the customer may be willing to buy it, but it's not going to be a good fit, and you're going to have a very expensive, unhappy customer in some cases. So that's
in that particular example, they actually had to go through a bake-off to do like experiments and invested proof of concept. So they had to win it.
Right.
But they ended up getting a very big deal out of it. So the client was, got a very good value, and they ended up winning a contract. But I think what that highlights is the partner ecosystem, is important.
And these are the kind of things that brands need to think about when they're thinking about their internal culture, because the biggest blocker to partner ecosystems success that I've seen in my career is the sales culture and the resistance to working with others and hearing that insight that you just described, because they're afraid of losing control, or they're afraid that the SI might be working with 3 or 4 competitors. So how do we know they're going to, be loyal to us? And that takes a cultural change that earns trust on both parties' part, but recognizes that the value there may be 5x of trying to control the deal and do it solo.
In some cases, I just have to put the customer first. In some cases, as a partner, I'll figure out that the client needs an RFP because that's the way they have requirements, but they need to make sure they're getting the most value, and they want to get all the stakeholders bought in, and there's a process they want to go through. In other cases, we actually determine that they have an existing vendor where they can learn and innovate and drive new value working with the vendor they already have. And then doesn't require an RFP. It doesn't require exploring new options. You want to get the most value out of the vendor you have. So that's about driving the client's success, driving the client value. They're mirrors of the same thing. Mirror image is the same thing. 2 sides of the coin.
That's right. And if you've built a trusting relationship with the customer as their service provider, you can advise them that way and help them not only pick the right solution, but save money in acquiring that solution by helping them circumvent, wasted RFP cycles or whatever is the process you're trying to streamline.
Yeah. And in other cases, the partner can help introduce and get a client to try something new where they have a trusted relationship with a vendor, and then they have a bit of a halo effect. They can get their client to try something.
Right. Exactly.
And then you might get a deal without an RFP because you try something, you do it, it works well, and they buy it.
And the reality is RFPs are one of the worst ways to evaluate and acquire complicated solutions anyway. They're really designed by, CPG and DoD, where they're buying large numbers of commoditized things, and you need to figure out, what's the best commoditized feature and price. But that's what we're talking about are very complex, difficult to put on a spreadsheet and compare to enterprise products that are very different. So I think advising a customer on an approach to evaluating them that isn't an RFP is also really an important part of the customer journey of work you do.
Well, I think that companies want to build an ideate, test, scale approach.
Right.
And your partner ecosystem is a source of ideas for ideating. It's also a way to test things, to run proof of concepts, to run pilots, and then you scale things. And then at the scaling side, you need to make sure that the partner ecosystem, it helps you get the client success you need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's back up a step, Peter. As a fractional executive focused on partner ecosystem, how is what you do different than people who focus on the client success side of things? Your complement to that.
most of my strength is in B2B SaaS companies. I've worked for quite a few early stage companies, and navigating how to go from either no partner program or a very formulative one to putting the tools and processes in place to help them scale. And there's an art form there that comes from experience, that you have to find that balance between needing a mature program, process, and tools, but it has to be fiscally responsible and agile. So an early stage company, may want a partner program as advanced and mature as Salesforce, to use that example from earlier, but it doesn't make sense for them at the stage company they are. So how do they get there long term? By taking, the one person they have who's, hanging wallpaper with one arm and turning on the kitchen sink at the same time with his feet. How do you take that one-man band and put in place ways to mature? And so the sales-oriented programming processes is a big part of my special sauce. But also, you and I have talked about the post-sale, the enablement part is also something that I am very passionate about, because it can't just be focused on the referral deal flow, because it's very short-sighted, and you'll have a lot of, in my experience, a lot of companies try that and they'll have 52 partner agreements signed and they'll have one partner who actually ever does anything. And that's because they're focused on the wrong thing. So putting in place a way to do onboarding and enablement in a early stage scalable way is also an art form that I help brands with.
I'm going to make this tangible for the audience if I can. Like, just like we talk about there being a customer journey, there's a customer journey from the standpoint of in a B2B lens, adopting a new technology or data or tech, as our new service vendor, where you're going to start with post-sale, you'll have onboarding and there'll be training and there'll be hypercare and going live and scaling. And there's all these different steps, and you could extend that journey back into the sales cycle about driving the requirements and getting alignment on them and testing and all these things that have to happen. All those moments in the journey are opportunities for things to go well or not well, to have the stakeholders on board, and the partner ecosystem helps you make that journey go well. And you can be very explicit around defining, like we talked a moment ago about the first 90 days after close. If you're really good at that about customer success, you will actually train your people about what to do in those 90 days, how to celebrate the successes, how to communicate, what things to do with the customer. And then you train your partners to do it too. And you share feedback with them about how it's going.
That's right. And you train your people to be doing that 90 days with the partner ecosystem as part of the lens. You're looking for opportunities to bring in a new partner. You're looking for opportunities to train an existing partner, but a new office. And one of the things that makes building partner ecosystems really complicated is a partner is not an individual person. I can't tell you how many times I've had C-suite executives say something like, is that partner fully onboarded? There's no such thing. If you think of your time at PwC, how would an ISV ever say PwC is fully onboarded? There's thousands of people across dozens of offices that constantly are changing personnel. They're moving from project to project. They're moving in and out of the company. So part of the challenge as a partner leader is figuring out how to continuously improve that relationship with that partner. So it's not just onboarding. Onboarding is a point in time. Its enablement is continuous. And that's really hard. You need to think about, how do you do that in a way that's scalable and even ISVs who think about that often are only thinking about it from their own point of view. They're not thinking from the service provider's point of view.
So I'm going to give 3 things that are actionable that our audience could take away from what we're just talking about. And I'm sure you'll have things to build on this. One is you can actually think about what is your partner ecosystem strategy and make it more explicit. You may have people who are doing it off the side of their desk or with their hands and feet, like Peter was using in his more creative metaphor a moment ago. So just actually think about what is your partner ecosystem strategy and what are the ways that you need to make that successful as you grow your business and scale your business. This will be particularly relevant for companies earlier in their life cycle, or if they're later in their life cycle and they haven't gotten this right, they can revisit it, right? So one thing you can do is we'd be very happy to talk with you together and have a free consultation about, learn about what you're doing and how you might think about taking that forward. So that's our offer to you, is to reach out to either of us over LinkedIn or email, and we'd be happy to have a conversation with you to see if that sparks some ideas for you. The second thing that you could take away is you might want to think about building out the personas and journeys, and think about, make sure that they consider the customer success angle and the partner ecosystem angle. Customer success would be people inside your company if you're a service provider. And then the partner ecosystems external, but are key stakeholders in customer success. So make sure your B2B customer journey and personas consider partners. And that's something Peter and I can help on together. And then third is, as you're thinking about customer listening, you actually, you can evolve your approach to using surveys to address the partner ecosystem, but also AI is changing the game for customer listening. Now you can mine emails, video meetings, phone calls. Don't just look at call centers as something to mine for data. All the interactions you have with your partner ecosystem and customers are data that you can mine to improve this opportunity.
I 100% agree with that, Matt, especially if you've got a reasonably mature customer success process already. Your CSMs probably have really good kickoff documentation, QBR documentation, and those are gold for mining for areas to improve. They will identify issues with existing partners. They will identify potential new partners or new integrations. So listening to just that set of information can be really gold for a brand.
So where do you see the greatest opportunities then for AI? We were just talking about customer listening and mining and developing insights. What are some of the other opportunities where vendors where the partner ecosystem can help accelerate value from AI?
I certainly think that's a really obvious one, using AI to mine that kind of in-house data. But I also think there is an opportunity within ecosystems for AI to start being more predictive. There's some really good stuff that the CRM vendors and one of my favorite vendors, Crossbeam, is doing to expose ecosystems data to one another in a controlled way. And the state of that part of ecosystem data right now is somewhat reactive. It's massively valuable, but it will tell you, if you and I have our pipelines connected on Crossbeam, it will tell us that we're both pursuing, a similar customer, or I'm pursuing one of your customers, or vice versa. That's very valuable. But I think AI has a potential of taking that kind of data a step forward and being predictive, looking at that historical customer and prospect data, but then also looking at service profiles and target account profiles, and beginning to identify mutually interesting net new targets for things like building ABM segmentation from that predictive set of data. And then I think there's such a massive amount of hype out there around AI. Everybody is excited and everybody is confused. Like, we know it's going to be earth-changing and changing our lives. We just don't know how yet. And I think for the partner ecosystem, that's an opportunity. for ISVs and service providers to work together. Everyone has their own special sauce or their own expertise around it. Let's start to share that. Let's look for areas where 1 + 1 = 3, and I think that can help us create intelligence, an intelligent approach out of some of the noise, as looking at what do you know, what do I know, how do those two things work together to create an offer or a solution or integration based upon the AI that's more meaningful than either one of us could do on our own.
I think that's really good advice. There's a lot of opportunities that we're talking about here. So definitely reach out to us if you want to chat about this. And, we're very excited to collaborate to help you drive more value from customer success and partner ecosystem management together. And it actually plays in really well with the CX and culture connection, because this allows you to build a culture of experimentation, culture of collaboration, the culture of data-driven decision-making. Like, this is important to how your culture impacts your experience for both customers and employees and your partners.
And I would add to that, Matt, a culture of omni-channel, persona. And I think you can't limit your culture and customer journey to just the prospect and the customer personas. If you think about the rest of the way you're going to market, all of those roles and all the different types of partners in your ecosystem and all of the channels you interact with them are part of your brand's, journeys.
I've really enjoyed our chat, Peter. I hope the audience has. I know you've sparked a lot of great ideas for me and for the audience too, I'm sure. What are some closing thoughts you have if people, things that you think people could take away from this around how to drive more impact by paying attention to the partner ecosystem?
I think the market is driving it as a requirement, not as a nice to have. I think, in technology and digital in particular, SaaS has become the main way brands are acquiring products. And you can't, if you're a SaaS service provider or a SaaS ISV, you will not be successful long-term if you use a traditional enterprise lone wolf kind of go-to-market strategy. Customers are going to be using your product or other products. They're going to be, hiring other service providers. So if you want to be more proactive and take a customer success-oriented, ecosystem-oriented approach, then I think that promises to be, you'll be more successful. And even in, the vendors who are trying a PLG approach, that's got a lot of momentum in certain segments of the market. But I think an ecosystem and customer success approach is valuable there as well, because it's not expected. PLG is expected to be Matt, going out to a website, self-service, acquiring some product and trying it out, and there you go. But I think if that PLG vendor has a method of having a high touch sales and service approach through an ecosystem, it's going to be unexpected. And if they do that while leveraging a PLG sales motion, but having an ecosystem-led service and support motion, they're going to accelerate past the PLG vendors who just say, "We got a great product, come check it out."
Right. So, particularly this will apply for companies that are earlier in their life cycle that want to get this equation right for sales, marketing, service, customer success, partner ecosystem. Get that right. How do you hyperscale your business with success, build it for success, get someone like Peter involved to build out as a fractional, doesn't have to require building out a whole team. In fact, you'll help them build the team and leave behind the organization if that's what's needed.
That's right.
And if you're a bigger company and you want to get yourself back on track and make sure your approach is not just focusing on sales, but marketing and customer success too, and also the culture side of it and the analytics side of it, then we're happy to team on helping you get that back on track. Peter, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for joining today, and to the audience, I hope this sparks some great ideas for you.